Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Taking a bit of a rest from the Bible series, but don't worry, I'm going to start working on Exodus probably tomorrow. In fact, the first episode's already recorded. I just need to get some more content. But that's not why I'm recording today. I didn't jump on this topic because everybody did, but the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a lot more nuanced than people believe. Yes, Russia is the aggressor. No question about that. They've been meaning to do this since 2014, and those two provinces that broke away just gave them the excuse they wanted. I mean, from their perspective, they're just doing peacekeeping. They're coming along solely to protect their own interests and defend the people who have legitimately broken away. It's a power grab, it's a power play from Putin, and people are losing their lives because of it, and that is the tragedy. But Russia has always been like that. When they were the Soviet Union, and even before, when the Tsar was around, they were trying to do land grabs in the East. And the Japanese were the ones that put an end to that. So this is totally within their playbook. When the United States said that they were not going to get involved, it was pretty much a death certificate for the Ukraine. Because, yeah, they're getting some small arms and stuff to defend themselves. Anti-aircraft missiles, TOWs, harpoons, stuff like that. But nothing that's really going to sway a conflict in a big way. What's interesting is Russia has a small, capable stealth fighter force. It's not being used. Kind of shows you that Russia is having bigger difficulties than they think. But here's what's going to happen. Putin is going to take those two provinces and mash them in with the other parts of Ukraine that he already has. Even if Kiev, however you decide to pronounce it, even if it holds, Putin will be in a position to dictate terms. And he will. The reason is they've been wanting to do this for decades now. When the Ukraine and the Soviet Union officially split up back in 1991, Ukraine became dependent on Russia for natural gas. And they've had to pay a lot of money to them over the years. One thing Russia has is fuel oil and natural gas. That's why Europe wouldn't step in, because Russia would only need to stop selling them oil, and Europe's screwed. I mean, they depend on raw oil for heating. They depend on natural gas for their heating. So we're in the midst of winter, and the Russians would just simply have to flip a switch, and Europe would be brought to its knees. Yes, the Saudis would be able to ramp up their output, but it still will take time to get there. And that's why Europe is staying out of the Ukraine conflict. They have a vested self-interest in Russia letting the oil flow. It's the exact same as it was during the Cold War. Russian oil was what kept them going. So what would motivate Putin now? Well, like I said, they're not committing their stealth fighters, which is strange because you would think you would want to show off those Su-57s, taking out targets on the first day, just like the United States did in the wars that it's been involved in. They show off their capabilities. Russia wants sales of those fighter jets, so they would want to be showing them off here. They're not. The legend of the Angel of Kiev is unfortunately just that. It was a story started by one guy on Reddit that took off and went viral. I hope there's such heroic defenders in the city. And indeed, I can imagine quite a few Ukrainians are fighting for their lives, but there's always been a large Russian population within the Ukraine. And Russia has shown its contempt for the Ukrainian citizens before. The 1920s and stretching on into the 30s, there was the Holodomor, which is kind of like the Holocaust, but in a passive-aggressive way. There was a famine in Ukraine, the farms were not producing food, and the Soviet Union, at that time, just decided to let them starve. Yeah, from each according to ability to each according to need. I guess they forgot that little part about Marx's work. So Ukraine is pretty used to getting beaten up by Russians, and that's why they're fighting. And it's easy to side with the underdog here, especially considering that Ukraine didn't really do anything bad to the Russians, aside from having some trouble managing their debt. I don't think that's a good reason to invade another country, and that's why Russia manufactured the reason by having those two provinces separate. It was a pretext, but Russia is bombing all of Ukraine. A limited war, I would be sitting here and I probably might even be able to come up with a case for defending the Russians. Instead, I'm explaining their actions and admitting they are aggressors. Now, the stand with Ukraine, I'm not going to condone it. I'm not going to deny it. Choose the side that best fits your interests. Maybe you have Ukrainian family. Perhaps you have Russian family. At any rate, that's your choice. And Silverlight gives you options and choices. Silverlight doesn't dictate from on high. Put up with the president for 4 years that I had an extreme dislike for. At the same token, I kept it professional. And that's what I'm going to do here during this war. So far, there's no reason for it to go nuclear, and I don't think it will. The Russians have always had a no first use policy. They've tried to get the United States to sign the same thing, except the United States has refused. So the thoughts of Russians going nuts and nuking places is erroneous. The fact that the United States wouldn't sign that treaty should tell you something about the two nations. So, nuclear options, that's not going to be on the table. That being said, we know in the past Russia has been able to put in secret police, and they're very good at espionage. As a matter of fact, the man in charge of Russia, Putin, is a former KGB agent. And he's playing a very smart game at the present time. This was a perfect opportunity for him. The two provinces rebel. He's got Europe under his thumb. The only wild card he needed to figure out was the United States. And once the United States declared they weren't going in, there was no better time for him to declare, well, he didn't even declare war. Countries don't declare war anymore. They intervene. And not just Russia. The United States, Canada, UK, Europe, everybody does the same thing. So really, it's really hard to blame the Russians for doing anything that the US hasn't already done. We live in dangerous times. We live in strange times. As the old Chinese curse goes, may you live in interesting times. And boy, the past couple of years have been interesting. The pandemic, this constant background chatter about whether somebody's a conservative or a liberal, despite the fact very few people understand those terms. And now this. You could set fire to a state. I mean, the whole state. And maybe one of the big ones, like Wyoming or something. We wouldn't even be talking about it by next week. You can already see the Russian-Ukraine war is making its way out of the news. First day it was big news, and now it's like, what's the next big thing coming around? If I knew when the Oscars and stuff like that were, if I actually cared, I would make a prediction that by then this would be back page news. But I don't, because I don't really follow entertainment. But Russia was kind enough not to interrupt the Super Bowl. Yes, these things are taken into consideration. China has recognized the Russian intervention. Remember, China and Russia are not as close friends as people think. So what's the angle that China is playing here? They're doing it because it suits them. Or you can indulge in a bigger conspiracy theory and say that this is the Hegelian dialectic and China is just simply doing what they're told. But from what I've seen, that never happens. Vladimir Putin is the perfect example of what I've said all along. He got his power when he wanted it. When he needed to invade Belarus, Georgia, and Ukraine, he did it. There's no conspiracy theory because humans, Donald Trump, when he had the chance to go for president, he waited. He waited a good 30 years for him to have the proper chance to be the president. Nobody waits generations. So if there's a worldwide Illuminati conspiracy, the evidence for it is shaky at best. Perfectly demonstrated by the Ukrainian invasion. Rest easy, my friends. Support who you're going to support. And if you can find a way to do it peacefully, because Silverlight is big on peace, then do so. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please hit like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to buy the merchandise. The book's down in the description. We're going to be starting Exodus very shortly. But most importantly, we hope you have a fantastic day.